Imagine, for a second, building an artificial intelligence so incredibly advanced that you literally have to put it in a mathematically rigorous, zero-trust cage just to keep it from confusing fact with fiction. Well, today, we're diving into an explainer on Project AETERNA. And to really get across the sheer paranoia and precision built into this architecture, we're going to frame this as a tense, kind of absurd military briefing. Picture it. You're in a dimly lit war room. On one side, you've got this highly decorated commander, totally raised on sci-fi action movies, expecting the ultimate tactical advantage. And on the other side, the lead engineer, clutching a clipboard, who cares about one thing and one thing only: strict architectural boundaries. The commander's expectations are about to violently collide with the engineer's technical reality. Let's see how this plays out. So the commander bursts into the room, totally pumped, fully convinced that today's the day they finally unleash a terrifying, world-ending AI superweapon. I mean, they are picturing the whole 9 yards. Autonomous drone swarms, predictive cyber attacks, a giant digital brain unilaterally deciding the fate of nations. You can feel the excitement. The ultimate weapon is finally here.
And then, the engineer immediately brings the entire room to a screeching halt. Just a polite but incredibly firm correction. You can practically hear the air leaving the room. The engineer says, "No, sir, AETERNA is an epistemic verification engine." Okay, so what does that actually mean in plain English? It's an experimental platform designed strictly to separate empirical truth from mere assumption. It doesn't attack anything. Instead, it basically violently interrogates its own internal logic to figure out what's real and what's just a wild guess. Now, the commander, completely ignoring the phrase epistemic verification, just leans in, eyes wide with anticipation, and goes right for the ultimate offensive question. Forget the philosophy. Can it launch the missiles?
The engineer delivers a flat, unyielding denial. Just a simple, grounded no. This system has absolutely zero built-in kinetic capabilities. It's not an attack dog. It literally has no hands, no triggers, and zero ability to blow anything up.
Okay, so the commander squints. They think they've spotted a loophole in all this engineering jargon. They're thinking, well, if there's an artificial intelligence component in here somewhere, surely the AI itself must have autonomous lethal authority, right? Like, what good is a military AI if it isn't making life-or-death decisions on its own?
And again, the engineer shuts it down. Also no. And honestly, this exchange perfectly nails the core philosophy of the whole project. The foundational rule of the AETERNA architecture is simply this: AI inference must never, ever be confused with authority, execution, or truth. I mean, just because a language model spits out a string of text that sounds like a great idea doesn't mean the system trusts it. We live in a world where AI chatbots will confidently invent fake legal cases or hallucinate facts out of thin air, right? So AETERNA operates on the assumption that AI is basically a brilliant but completely untrustworthy brainstormer.
At this point, the commander is utterly confused. They're looking at this massive, incredibly complex system that seemingly has absolutely no offensive capabilities, and they just throw their hands up in genuine exasperation. Like, then what does it do? If this highly advanced, massively expensive architecture isn't a weapon, what is it? So the engineer lets out a sigh and breaks it down. AETERNA provides a machine-verifiable framework. Basically, before the system can make any decision or recommendation, it literally has to prove its work. It checks exactly where the evidence came from, it hunts for logical contradictions, and it strictly separates the AI's analysis from the actual authorization to act. In short, it tells us whether the evidence supporting a decision actually satisfies the explicitly declared rules. There's this long pause, the gears in the commander's head are turning, and surprisingly, they approve. They instantly pivot. They realize the insane tactical advantage of having the ultimate, foolproof bullshit detector. Think about it. A system that guarantees the absolute integrity of its own intelligence, completely immune to AI hallucinations, deepfakes, or unverified assumptions. Flawless intelligence is absolutely a weapon in its own right. To explain how this flawless intelligence actually works under the hood, the engineer introduces Veritas. This is the system's epistemic control layer. Think of Veritas as the lead detective. Its entire reason for being is to ask, what do we actually know? It actively hunts down contradictory evidence and unresolved questions. And to do this, it preserves evidence using W3C provenance standards. If you're not familiar, that's basically a highly secure, standardized way of tracking exactly where a piece of digital data came from. It's constantly looking for ways its own conclusions could be wrong, actively fighting that human tendency to just believe what we want to hear. Right next up is AETHER.
The engineer explains that this is the experimental research substrate. But the crucial part here, especially from a security standpoint, is that it acts as the strict authorization boundary for execution. Think of Aether as this incredibly secure, soundproof laboratory. It can investigate super complex hypotheses all day long, running simulations on quantum information or cognitive science. But it physically cannot unlock the door to push those ideas into the real world until undeniable proof is provided. It draws a massive, thick line between established knowledge and speculative ideas.
So the commander, who is now totally hooked on this bizarre truth engine, asks, well, who actually makes the tactical decisions if the AI isn't in charge? And that leads the engineer to introduce Concordia. If Veritas is the detective gathering the facts, Concordia is the judge and the jury. It's the system's central will and governance engine. It takes in all the evidence, the uncertainty, the competing recommendations, the safety constraints, and from all that, it produces a final instruction set. Now, Concordia doesn't just rely on some single monolithic algorithm. It uses specialized agents for what's called agent consensus. You've got the protector prioritizing safety, the scholar looking for historical precedent, the critic whose entire job is to actively try and tear the argument apart, plus the scientist, engineer, and ethicist. And the engineer stresses a really vital point here. This council doesn't exist just to nod along and manufacture some fake consensus. In AETERNA, dissent is treated as highly valuable data. If a minority opinion gets rejected, it isn't just erased. It stays as a permanent logged part of the historical reasoning record.
Of course, the commander, ever the opportunist, still wants a weapon, so they try to figure out how to weaponize the system's telemetry to spy on enemies. But the engineer shuts it down again. The reality here is observatory, which follows a strict read-only philosophy. Listen, just because the system can see server metrics or global logs does not automatically give it any ability to alter them. It's observability, not a targeting scope. It's like you can look out the window, but you can't fire a gun through it. Visibility simply does not equal authority.
Still holding out hope for maybe some AI-driven cyber warfare, the commander gets disappointed yet again. The engineer explains that AETERNA uses Google Cloud's Vertex AI for model inference, sure, but it does so through completely isolated provider boundaries. The AI's thoughts are entirely disconnected from the ability to actually execute code. The AI's is basically kept in a digital padded room. It can think, analyze, and scream out brilliant tactical ideas all day long, but it has absolutely no hands to touch the outside world directly.
The whole architecture relies on a zero-trust model and fail-closed execution. And fail-closed just means that if something goes wrong or a single permission check fails, the system immediately slams the door shut rather than accidentally leaving a back door open. It uses short-lived digital identities, relying on credential isolation to basically hand out passwords that expire in seconds. This treats every single step as a completely separate security boundary. Inference is completely separated from verification. Verification is separated from authorization, and authorization is strictly separated from execution. Implicit trust is entirely eliminated. An AI-generated or priced is treated as totally untrusted data until it clears every single hurdle.
Desperate for some kind of targeting system, the commander asks how they track enemy movements over time. The engineer just sighs, probably rubbing their temples at this point, and introduces Phoenix. Phoenix doesn't track enemies at all. It tracks AETERNA's own intellectual history. It serves as the unalterable scientific memory of this system itself. See, Phoenix uses cryptographic lineage to create this tamper-evident append-only ledger. When a claim is made, its provenance is checked. Its epistemic status is logged, whether it's an established fact, highly contested, or just totally speculative. And then it's cryptographically chained. It's actually drawing inspiration from open-source standards used to prevent software supply chain attacks. So essentially, it creates an unhackable receipt of every hypothesis, every single field prediction, and every single time the system legitimately changed its mind because it got new evidence. The engineer leans across the table and powerfully emphasizes the absolute prime directive of the AETERNA project. These specific categories of knowledge: known, tested, derived, assumed, and unverified. These must never ever blur together. The boundary between what is mathematically proven and what is merely imagined by an AI has to be permanently, clearly marked. That hard distinction is the absolute bedrock of the entire architecture. It's the one thing preventing a cascade of AI hallucinations from taking down the whole system.
So the commander sits back in their chair, speaking with this kind of misplaced awe. They finally get it. They grasp the immense complexity, the absolute zero-trust paranoia, the rigorous scientific boundaries of this insane truth-seeking engine. And looking at all this incredible lockdown architecture, they have to ask the ultimate sci-fi question. So,
When does the AI become omnipotent?
The engineer, thoroughly exhausted, looks them dead in the eye and delivers a completely deadpan response, probably after we finish NPM install. It's just hilarious. It completely grounds this incredibly dense, philosophical, hyper-secure architecture right back into the mundane, agonizing, everyday reality of JavaScript package management.
I mean, it perfectly captures the reality of software engineering, doesn't it? No matter how grand your zero-trust epistemic architecture is, you're still just sitting there waiting for your front-end build tools to compile. I want to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up this explainer. As we rush headfirst into building increasingly autonomous AI, maybe our greatest defense isn't some superweapon at all. Maybe it's forcing the AI to rigorously prove its own sanity before it can take a single action. And hey, maybe, just maybe, we're ultimately saved just by having to wait for the progress bar on our dependencies to finally hit 100%. Thanks for hanging out with us today, and we'll see you next time.